Thank you. This is our third visit here, and delighted to be back amongst friends. And thank you to all those, before I start, thank you to all those who fed into our thinking and the design of this business. I could go into stories of conferences having long discussions with many of you in the room, so thank you for that. First, just a clarification of who we are. Our business model is a little bit different. We consult, and that's the Lavery Pennell business, on rapid sustainable innovation. That includes resource efficiency, circular business models, but also cost reduction. And resource efficiency is a very large part of that cost reduction. There's some of the team that we work with. But also what we recognised, if our overarching aim and our belief as individuals is that there is a mass of value available from a more sustainable approach to business. And that value is environmental value, social value, and economic value. And if you believe that value exists, one way to capture that is consulting. However, big companies have inertia, and there are a whole bunch of reasons why that might be slow. On the other hand, there's actually a whole bunch of disruptive opportunities that you can actually start up a business around. So we actually also start up businesses to capture that value as well. And so we should, right? If we believe the value's there for our client, why shouldn't we capture that value? And what that enables us to do is take all those learnings from these startups and feed them into client engagements, which means hopefully we deliver a better proposition or better value for our clients, just because we've been there and seen it ourselves in our operations at this end of things. So today, this is the journey, and for those who've been coming to these wonderful conferences for the last 3 years, I'll just recap where we've come from. From those who are new this year, you'll see the journey. In 2013, we teamed up with 2 Degrees and the IFM on a piece we call the Next Manufacturing Revolution. Our assertion or hypothesis was that resource efficiency has a lot of potential value in the UK manufacturing sector specifically. And there were 7 dimensions that we examined there. You'll notice that water isn't there. That was a very conscious choice. We said, look, water's not a big economic driver here. Let's leave water out of it just so that we could manage the scope. And for all of those who are doing a PhD, as I did, scope management is a massive issue, especially when this is being done in spare time. We found there was a massive opportunity, and we launched a report in Parliament House in mid-2013. The numbers there are basically a 12% increase in profits for manufacturers. That's the 10 billion per annum. 300,000 new jobs, or 12% increase in manufacturing jobs in the UK, and a 27 million tonnes of CO2 saving per annum, which, to give you an idea, in terms of the whole of the UK's footprint, that's 4.5% of every greenhouse gas emission from the UK, not just the manufacturing sector. So 2014 then was about engagement. So we went out, we worked with the food and beverage sector in a workshop led by the Cambridge University and specifically Steve's team at the IFM. We did some work with the new industrial model with Interface. We did corporate projects and various other pieces that Steve mentioned the other day, and the All-Party Parliamentary Resource Group, who are also here today. Our report card at this very conference last year, you'll recall we did a bit of a cheeky report card. In that we said, look, the summary was substantial opportunities remain, and specifically on the circular resource use, what worried us was that it was very fashionable, but there really wasn't much happening at 12 months ago. And we called it, very cheekily, admiring the problem. And there's a whole lot of professional circular economy admirers out there. Obviously none in this room, but nevertheless there are some out there. So in 2015, in fact, over the last 12 months, we built 2 resource efficiency businesses, which I'll introduce, and we'll focus on this second remanufacturing one in a moment. The first one relates to energy efficiency, which is Rype Guides. Now, yesterday morning, Nikki spoke beautifully about the problem that small, medium enterprises have with this information asymmetry. And the problem there is, if you've only got a £40,000 per annum energy bill, to pay someone 5 to 10 grand to come in and tell you that you've got an opportunity to save another 5 to 10 grand, those economics just don't work out, because the consultant might believe the savings are there, but the senior executive who's having to pay those big bills doesn't necessarily believe that's there. So how do you overcome that? So what we recognised is that there was an opportunity, and surprisingly a gap that hadn't been filled, for a do-it-yourself product. So what we've done is we've codified all of the very heavy-duty textbooks on energy efficiency down into a free essential guide that says, here's the basics of how you do an energy efficiency review of your business. What do you measure? How do you put that into graphs? And how do you find the biggest opportunities? And so whilst Nikki identified yesterday that there needs to be something to break down that initial barrier, that's something we've been working on. So we're delighted to hear her view that this market really exists. The revenue comes from what we call the capture guide. So once you've identified that you might have a saving in lighting or HVAC, there is a specific guide for £30, cost of a good textbook. So this is a simple model. It's global. We've got various distribution partners we're in discussion with, not least of which are big utilities and sustainability networks. So we're pretty excited about that business, but I won't go on about that. Welcome questions on it. The second business that we opened is around office furniture and remanufacturing of that. And we did that through a very scientific process that started with, we recognised this opportunity, we went through all the industry codes, and we recognised that for all the criteria that we talked about for what is remanufacturable in this circular piece in the chapter 8, I think it was, of the next manufacturing revolution, there were some sectors of UK industry that were actually ripe for this disruption. And it turned out that office furnishings, including carpeting and carpet tiles specifically, chairs, desks, cabinet, and even laptop computers, is a sector that's really not particularly well served, or wasn't 12 months ago. The computer sector has subsequently grown enormously, but the office furniture still remains an opportunity that we're doing. And we thought, we're not just going to do this on our own, we want to share the learning. So thanks to Steve and Ian for their generous invitation to come along and share. We extend an invitation to everyone to ask us questions about how we've done this, because I really love Mike Tennant's view on the sort of the future of value is a network, not necessarily a value chain. And we are a product of a value network that many of you are part of, so thank you for that. So let's keep sharing any questions. Happy to do this in a transparent way, and we'll be producing case studies as we go. So this is the magnitude of the problem, and I've inserted this slide because Cressy's talk yesterday was so inspiring. This is the situation we have in the UK. So we've got about 2 billion of commercial furniture coming in to the country. The whole industry for furniture is about 10 billion a year. So it's quite a large industry, and I know Mark and the Vitso team know all this too well. Unfortunately, for most office furniture, when they look a bit saggy, they're sent off to the landfill or for recycling. The figures from Rype are that 300 tonnes of office furniture every working day is sent to landfill. That's a third. There's another 2/3, so another 600 on top of that, tonnes a day go into recycling, in inverted commas, some of which is off to heat. So it's incinerated in essence, which we think is a massive waste of value. So we've set up this remanufacturing alternative in the UK, creating jobs, reducing the environmental impact by, well, it depends on the literature you read. It's normally sort of 70 to 80, even 90%, depending on the particular metric. We can do it for less than half the recommended retail price of new, and we're enforcing quality very hard. So that sort of sums up where we're coming from. And of course, we did some research to make sure that was real. This is standing about 2/3 of the way into a warehouse looking backwards. This is one day's returned furniture to this one warehouse from office clearances around the country served by this one particular company. Every day this ends up in a skip. This particular factory has 4 people full-time with big sledgehammers knocking this into the component parts and putting it into skips to be sent off for, inverted commas, recycling. And you can see, actually, if you think about these, so they'll see all this steel work down here, most of which is aluminium. That's valuable, so yes, that gets sent to scrap metal. But on the other hand, this is, if you can imagine how long that's designed to last, that's a 50 to 100-year component, right? And this is probably only 6 or 7 years old, some instances maybe up to 15 years old. So clearly there's a problem that sort of tugs at our heartstrings. Now, interestingly, we don't show this slide to clients, right? Because this, and I'll get onto the messaging in a little bit more when I go into the lessons, but remember this slide and remember that we'll never show that to a client for a very good reason, which I'll explain in a moment. So, in order to sort out the proposition, and let me introduce you to the business, and then we'll talk about why we've shaped the business in this particular way. So what we offer to clients is essentially 3 types of furniture. One is your existing furniture refreshed, It's already there. It already fits in your decoration patterns within your offices. Why not refresh that? And that's what some clients choose to take from us. In other instances, we'll go out there and source cores from other used furniture sources and then remanufacture that with new fabrics, new arms and everything else, and we'll get to quality in a moment. But what we recognise is that's not enough, because some clients say, well, look, I really want a brand new piece over here, or I'm thinking of this fantastic new collaborative workstation idea, and it's only just freshly on the market. So we've actually, in our supply network, got relationships with new manufacturers as well to be able to supply new. Because this is the reality right now, is we're starting from nothing, an industry that's not really established. We want to be able to supply every customer with what they need, and sometimes we're just going to have to accept that that'll have to be new. But if we didn't offer that, we'd be, well, you can't meet my whole needs, I'll go and talk to someone who can, which then is the fallback to new, and we're not actually then penetrating the market at all. The other innovation that we've had to introduce is the design service, because what we realised is that one of the major barrier is quality, and the people who are traditionally the custodian of that quality are the architects and designers. And from my experience with architects, often when they get a brief from a client, what they see in their mind's eye is a glossy spread in a magazine. And anything that endangers that glossy spread, like the potential for a defective piece of furniture or something that doesn't look perfect, they immediately dismiss, because they want that perfection in the glossy magazine. Now, that might be completely divorced from what the client wants, but nevertheless, we recognise that architects and designers are a disaster of a channel for us. They just don't get it. So we are going direct to clients, and in order to go direct to clients, we want a design arm so that we can have that conversation. And the real beauty of the design arm comes in the iteration. So let's say a client says, roughly, this is the spec that I want. We go away and we search for the furniture pieces, we come up with designs, and we do that iteratively, because if we can find, let's say, a beautiful collaborative suite that's been designed by or produced by a manufacturer that's sitting in the surplus stock warehouse, and many of them have those, and we can get that for 70% cheaper than new, we want to be able to provide that to our client, because otherwise that will be recycled as well. So, and then that might have a lovely blue, which we weren't thinking about, so we can adjust in conversation with the client, adjust the colour scheme, and then fit that into the design. All the time, saving resources and saving money for the client as well. But that design service we see is absolutely key. Now, fortunately, my PhD was in green buildings, so actually I can add a little bit of value in that, plus we've got some wonderful designers that we collaborate with. So you can appreciate pulling all this network together into a value network has taken us 12 months to date. And we lead with three very simple metrics: half the cost, a third the environmental impact, which is a bit conservative, but we wanted to cover our all bases, recognising that there could be a mix, and creating UK jobs through remanufacturing here. That's our proposition. I'll unpick that for you as we go on. A second really key part of our proposition is quality. We use, the reason there are pieces here is so that you can see it for yourself, because most people in their mind's eye are going, remanufactured equals used equals smelly and horrible and stained and whatever. But actually you can see for yourself that we have pristine surfaces, and we'll get into the grading in a minute. And so we use photography where we can. This is all high quality photography by a professional photographer, but also the pieces themselves speak for themselves. And I encourage you to have a look at these two chairs here and our stand as well. We've got some more pieces of various grades that I can talk you through, which all have different price points. We actually then invented 7 layers of quality in order to reinforce this quality message, to separate in the minds of buyers the difference between used and remanufactured. We actually choose used furniture very carefully. We source the best components and materials to remanufacture. And so, for example, Egger and Kronospan are makers of beautiful various different compound materials for desktops, for instance. So we can choose anything from their catalogue, because every desktop is made new for a whole bunch of reasons, which I can go into regarding manufacturing if you'd like. And we talk about the equipment and processes, and we've invented a grading scheme there in order to align with a couple of other refurbishers who have a grading scheme, one in the carpet tile industry. because we recognise that if you just say remanufactured, people don't even know what it is, let alone what they're getting. So we have on our website, and we send to clients, a definition of what A plus A and B mean. So A plus, for instance, is indistinguishable from new. Literally, with a microscope, you couldn't tell the difference. And there's one chair on our stand in the room. These ones here, I think, are probably about A. So our definition of A is if you're standing 2 metres away with the naked eye in good light, can you see any scratches at all on them, right? And then B actually is the lowest standard, which is a couple of visible scratches, but not on any of the surfaces. Everything's recovered. And the reason that's useful is because some clients want something that'll fit in with their existing furniture, and they're happy to take a massive price discount to do that. So there's a bit of innovation and invention that we've had to do in order to invent this whole field of remanufacturing. And then finally the warranting as well. So I think that's the last wordy slide we've got, so let's move beyond it. We've been really lucky, so we've won an award already, and we use social proof a lot. So whilst we're still starting up, we've had some fantastic inquiries from some really big buyers, and which we're delighted about. So for our clients, this is a really useful social proof slide that says remanufacturing is real, it's being at least considered by some big organisations, and hopefully we'll sign a few of those, and then we'll be able to say, hey, we have real companies out there who are bigger than yours that are really taking this up right now. So it's a real product that really meets their needs, and they're very happy with the quality. So that for us is a really big part of our proposition. So to unpick that, what we've just gone through, let's go through some of the learnings so far. So firstly, the economics for remanufacturing can work, but you've got to work really, really hard at it. And what we find is quite interesting. So when we talk with a client in our consulting business, the client says, well, we looked at the numbers for a recommended retail piece of roughly the same cost as that, might be a home appliance, and we can't make the numbers work. So we say, well, how did you do your logistics? Because of course there's two sets of logistics. They said, well, we called up UPS and we said, what would it cost to get a piece from anywhere in the world back to our factory? And of course, and then back again, right? And of course, UPS go, worst in the world is Iceland or Antarctic or whatever, and the price they get back is absolutely astronomical, right? So there's a real issue of how you get those prices. You've got to think local. There's some fantastic new distribution systems, disruptive models emerging that do all sorts of collaborative load sharing and things like that. Got to ferret those sorts of solutions out for your transport side of things, but then of course there's manufacturing solutions as well. So there's a lot of work in figuring out the economics. Second key learning that we found is that you need to start product forward and customer back. So it's not just good enough to come up with a low-cost product, you need to figure out what the customer really wants and work backwards, which is where our design business and our different grades came from. So what we were working on is in the same day, trying to whittle down the cost as much as we can, and literally talking to potential customers saying what exactly do they want, how are we going to work with this. And it can be very technical on the cost reduction. So for example, we've done a lot of research into surface coatings. So things as simple as chrome. You can't chrome plate stuff anymore because that's an incredibly toxic process. There are some silver nitrate solutions coming out of Germany right now that are commercial that we can adopt, and a whole bunch of others, probably at least a half a dozen surface technologies that we've figured out to help bring a piece back to new. Start with the industry, where the industry is now, and make it easy for customers. So, I mean, we talk a lot in our language about servitized solutions, but if you say that to someone, they just look at you and go, I just want 5 chairs, right? They don't want a servitized solution, they want 5 chairs. So what we need to do is break that down into something very simple that says, sure, we can give you 5 chairs. Do you want them new, or do you want your existing ones, or do you want something that we've remanufactured, and by the way, here's a look at the quality of what you can get from that. And we have to use existing products. We could start a design company that comes up with chairs. I'd rather start once we've actually got demand, and instead of sourcing from other manufacturers, we actually then use that demand to feed our own products in. And that's a long, expensive process to design new chairs and tables for remanufacturing. And let's face it, one of the factors in choosing office furniture is that modern office furniture is pretty remanufacturable right now. It's not that difficult to do. And then finally, around the sort of on that first point there around the buyback and leasing. So instead of saying servitise, we say, hey, if you buy from us, how would you like a guaranteed buyback price? That's what Caterpillar do, right? That's how you make a circular product, or one way to control the product, which was a finding from the next manufacturing revolution, or alternatively lease it. And we have a leasing partner who can offer 3% annual interest on a lease, which is just astonishing. So again, that's part of the disruptive peer lending changes that we're seeing in the financial services industry. Sure, we'll pick that up. That's great for our clients. And then we talked about quality perceptions, have to address it head on, showing real items, the grading system we've talked about, and the social proof. Fifth key learning is that we have to be careful with the messaging. There are so many different ways you could approach this with the customer. Actually, what most customers care about is cost. That's our foot in the door. The sustainability for some is really important, so we have to judge that very carefully. Obviously, for this audience, in this discussion, we lead with that infographic showing the resource flows, but practically, mostly, we lead with costs. We have to use positive images, so stinking, steaming landfills, and that slide that I showed earlier of a bunch of chairs, that is a real no-no, because what we're trying to sell is a beautiful new chair, and we're competing against the likes of Herman Miller, Steelcase, some of the world's biggest manufacturers who have the most beautiful websites out there, and they don't even mention remanufacturing, even though some of them recycle. They don't even talk about recycling. It's all under a, hey, aren't we great and aren't we sustainable? Click down through and you will eventually find that they recycle. Actually, they don't lead with sustainability at all. They lead with beauty, functionality, and of course they won't talk about cost because it's ridiculously expensive new stuff, as you would know if you've ever bought a chair. And we've also simplified the language, so we don't use the word remanufactured, we use refreshed for an existing chair, or remade, just because remade is a whole lot simpler and it sounds artisanal, and there's actually a whole Remade in Britain movement as well. And then other learnings, need to work with others. You can see there's a ton of different skills that are needed in there, so hence the value network comment. And what we're finding is that big manufacturers often struggle with many of these. There's lots of inertia, there's pushback from sales and marketing teams around pollution of the brand or cannibalisation of market share. And so what we find is that those who succeed actually build a remanufactured or a circular business off to the side quite often. This is a journey for us. We're really only starting out. We'd love, if you think this is a great idea, we'd love your support in getting the message out there. We have a Twitter, which is all new to us, right? I mean, our consulting business, we don't use Twitter. But if you can share the message, if you think it's a good one, we'd really appreciate your support going forward.